Good evening! Tonight, we're doing dailies with Ninja. Meowie says, I honestly may fall asleep watching this. I'm nodding off at my desk already. Well, I hope not, especially not if you're still at work. Depending on whether it's your desk at home or your desk at work. It's a shame Ghost Howler couldn't be here. He said hours ago that he couldn't. That's okay. Hopefully he'll enjoy the VOD later. Hey Gelano! You worked the weekend, so you had yesterday and today off. That still sucks that you lose the entire weekend. Right, so as is tradition on these streams, we will simply go down the list and do the roulettes. The ones we're skipping are, as usual, main scenario, guild hest, mentor, and frontline. And then we usually finish with a run of Euphrosyne for the coin. Yeah. Part of the reason we don't do the specific roulettes is because main scenario takes a lot of time and is mainly just cutscenes. Guild hests, do people even, do anyone queue for those? Like, do anyone actually queue for those? And also, they're really strange. They are typically extremely easy unless you misunderstand the actual task. There are some of them you can fail by simply doing it wrong. And mentor simply is, there's too wide a span of what you can end up in. Like, if we reach mentor when there's like 30 minutes until I would like to finish the stream, for example, then it will simply not work very well if I then land in a mentor roulette where we drop into, I don't know, Sephiroth Extreme, and we can't beat it, because then we're stuck there for, I think it's an hour. I'm pretty sure it's an hour that you get for those. Does it not say? I thought it would say. I usually don't read these super closely, so I'm not sure. Oh, 60 minutes. And you might think, well, no one would queue for Sephiroth Extreme, but you'd be wrong. Back in Shadowbringers, I landed in Sephiroth Extreme once with Mentor Roulette. And Frontline, it's so different, such a different type of content that, like, if we're doing Ninja, the ninja that I'm playing for all the other roulettes is a completely different ninja from the one that we're playing in Frontline. So it would be like a different kind of stream. I think we have done Ninja Frontline once on stream, like just an entire stream of Ninja in Frontline. And Coco says I would queue for it. That wouldn't surprise me. The reason why I recommend that you don't queue for the extremes with just Duty Finder like this is because the only people that are going to be playing with you if you do that are other sprouts, because you're probably a sprout if you're queuing for an extreme this way. Other sprouts who are also doing that and possibly have no idea what the tactics are for the fight, and mentors who are not prepared for that. They're not prepared to carry however many players it ends up being through such a fight. And some of these fights you simply can't learn in one sitting if people haven't prepared themselves, you know, done their homework. And basically the players that queue for these kinds of extremes through Duty Finder are typically the kind of players that believe that since it is in the Duty Finder, it is doable in the Duty Finder, and all the other content they've been doing through the Duty Finder, they could easily do in a single sitting, often without a single failure, right? So, would be very surprising if you if your first extreme you queue for is like Sephiroth, but you know, the idea is there. The idea that if you're queuing for an extreme through Duty Finder, you probably haven't done your homework, and if you haven't done your homework, then you don't know that people don't usually queue for these things. Like, those things go hand in hand. Hey Mihuels and Don Tubo. Glad to see people in chat. It makes it a lot easier to know how many people are actually here when I see a little message when you come in. I really appreciate it. For some reason, YouTube tends to be extremely janky on the exact amount of people watching, so you never know. I think the most interesting aspect of that, I don't know how many of you find that fascinating, but if you've ever noticed that a stream on YouTube has a certain amount of people viewing, like it says active viewers or something like that. It says a different word on my screen because it's in Danish, but it says a certain number, then something exciting happens, or something that causes people to maybe want to respond in chat, so they click the window in their browser. Like they put it in focus. Incidentally, what that means is something exciting happens, and suddenly the amount of active viewers triples or something, or doubles, or vastly increases, and I don't think it's possible that it's because in that very moment, like 8 people, depending on the amount, happen to mouse over the stream, see the preview, and see something exciting happening with no sound, of course. And then click on it. Like, that's impossible. So, fun fact, I think YouTube might be paying attention to who's, like, mainly looking at the stream and who isn't. Doesn't matter to me. Although it gets a little weird when there's 3 or 4 people writing in chat whilst YouTube is actively saying there's one person watching. I think that one is very fascinating when that happens. Hopefully the queues won't be too long. It's an unfortunate result of queuing as a DPS. And speaking of queuing, now I've already queued for the first one, but I still want to say that if you are in EU, like if you have an eligible character in the European data centers, either Chaos or Light, and you would like to join me for any of these roulettes, you're very welcome to do so. All you have to do is, well, first of all, let me know in chat so that I know that you're coming. And make your way to Louisoix on Chaos, which is where we are. You can also visit my house if you really want to surprise me. That is also an option. And you just let me know that you want to join, and I'll make sure to invite you. The requirement being that you have access to the roulette that I'm going to be doing. And depending on how many we are, if we're, you know, starting to fill up a group, then maybe you have to be a little bit flexible. Like, if we don't have space for anything but a tank, then either someone has to switch or you have to be tank. Also, there is a good chance that I will not be able to perfectly perform the openers and rotations that I've showcased in my guides. Turns out they're not easy to get right every time. I practiced a little bit before the stream, and it was not the first try that I got the opener correctly. But when we're doing random content, like a dungeon or even a raid, you can't even rely on the pull being correct for the opener with something like Ninja. So we'll manage. We will manage. 6 minutes. I wonder if that will actually apply. I just saw that we dropped two seats twice. Maybe there's a group that is going to happen a little sooner. Yeah, and the oh, and now it's only one seat. I wonder how that happened. I suppose it was a tank or a healer queuing with a DPS. Maybe that's how that happens. I've never thought about that before. Well, I hope you guys are having a great Tuesday. Having fun. Doing something that you like. In addition to watching my stream, whether you like that or not. Better to do the preemptive Huton before the tank has an opportunity to pull in the first place. Ravio says, Ninja seems like a bad starting class. Yes, I would say so. Ninja is probably one of the harder jobs, and it does not help Ninja's case in that regard that the job is heavily concentrated its learning curve in the first levels, where you have to learn to understand all of the jutsus and stuff like that. You have to memorize those. Oh, whoops. Messed up my Raiju there. But it is certainly not one of the easy jobs. Fortunately, there's a very low chance that a new player would accidentally choose Ninja as their first job, because you can't actually start as a rogue. You know, the preliminary job, or the class that becomes Ninja. That is simply not offered in the character creation. So there's that at least. That helps it a little bit, but it's still brutal. Sansa says at least it's only in fast bursts, or it's only fast in bursts. That's true. For me, it's just the fact that Ninja is one of the jobs where you need to. Is the tank okay? You need to know the special combos for the ninjutsus, and if you mess it up, you're literally doing nothing. Like you're just summoning a bunny on your head instead of actually doing damage. And not a lot of jobs have failure conditions like that. Ninja is one of the only ones. Monk is actually another one of the jobs that have that. Failure conditions. Because you can mess up your your masterful blitzes. Hey Woolly Ram. Gilano says, but what's better? Defeating bosses or summoning bunnies? That is an interesting point. Maybe the real value of the ninja job is that it can summon bunnies. A funny story is that, so a while back, when I made a bunch of videos comparing the different jobs in Final Fantasy XIV, in each role as a category, the job that I had the hardest, one of the hardest times actually getting footage for was Ninja, where I did a dungeon. I believe Zip was there for some of the footage that plays in that video, and it was like, normally I'm very open to just like freestyle my position in something like Court of Troya and the final boss. No problem, I'll just move around. If someone else doesn't know where to stand, I'll just move out of the way. With Ninja, I was literally just looking at my bars, just 100% super focus, and I still messed it up. But I think I've gotten a little bit better at that now. Oh. Boss is nearly dead. That really makes it awkward. No! Okay, then I'm summoning a bunny. Better than doing nothing. Hey, Makoto! But I was really, like, the final boss in Court of Troya has this mechanic where it, like, summons a lot of circle AoEs and puts sprint markers on everyone, and generally there's, like, 4 good safe spots to stand on where you don't break anything, basically. Because the AoEs from that mechanic actually breaks the gates behind you that you need for the knockback that follows immediately after. Ugh. So, like, I had experienced running out of spots to stand in for the knockback because my team didn't actually know that, so we just actively broke the gates by accident. But that means that there's like 4 spots you can actually stand in at all for that mechanic. Where there are more spots you could stand in, but it will hurt you later down the line, especially if the fight drags on. And I would simply just step onto one of them that I liked, like, oh, this one is pretty good for my positionals as a ninja, and then just not move, even though it was clear that I could have been a lot more helpful for my team. Because I was just so incredibly focused on just trying to get the rotation right. I think I'm... Oh, is the tank alright? Is the tank alright? Marcus says going to listen while I farm tomestones. Oh, is it the big Mogtome farm? Oh, the tank is actually dead. I don't feel like I did very much there, but we survived, just barely. Oh, the tank is just going. The healer was busy saying sorry. The tank just went for it. Let me just be a little bit slow on the opener here so that I can fix my cooldowns. And I wasted some Minky. This is exactly one of the reasons why I think it's good to have these actual showcase streams like this, because I can spend like a whole video showcasing how you play a job perfectly, and then Like, how do you actually do it? But in reality, it is typically never that easy. I have heard on previous streams that people appreciate that they see that I don't just do it perfectly either. It makes it feel more attainable to do it just okay, when it doesn't look like you're supposed to just know how to play it perfectly intuitively. Oh, let's see here. I think I want to go over there when she moves. Oh! Let's see, Santos says, for me the hardest part of Ninja is probably Tenchi since you can't move at all. A lot of Savage or Ultimate fights especially require you to move during bursts, and I have no clue how you're supposed to do it. But I don't play melee in anything harder than Extreme, so I don't think about that too much. I guess the way that Ninja mains would have to go about it, and this is, you know, just me thinking it, because I don't know for certain. But my assumption is that once you get a little bit more accustomed to a specific fight, you plan your burst around the fact that you're going to have to stand still. In this way, either like you delay Tenchi slightly so that it fits in a point where you can stand still, or you put it a little sooner because you know it won't be able to fit in your burst anyway, or you just put it later and then you'll just have to catch it up later on, things like that. I suppose it's comparable to how when you're optimizing a job like Summoner, and now some people will say there is nothing to optimize. Then the main thing you will be optimizing around for Summoner tends to be like, if you're going down to the really small details, is like, well, the one time you don't want to be stuck with only Ifrit, the summon Ifrit part of your rotation is when you're not allowed to stand still, right? So that means that if you're optimizing your rotation around a specific boss fight, then you would be paying extremely close attention to, well, when can I stand still in this fight? And then plan the uses of Ifrit around that specific time. If that happens to land during the burst at some point, for whatever reason, that is of course the inverse of the ninja problem. But if that was the case, the best you could do would be to, you know, place the Ifrit burst, or the Ifrit part of your rotation where you would normally do Titan or Garuda, because, well, if you don't do it then you won't be able to do it later. And that's just one example, of course.
I've been waiting so long. Don't disappoint. Brace yourselves.
Oh, this is going to get scary.
I bring my all to bear.
Where is the spot? Yeah. I think that was too early. Nope, but it doesn't matter because it wouldn't have worked anyway. Well, I think we got the opener mostly right there. The only thing is I forgot to use Dream Within a Dream, but I did get it in while Mog was still running. Like right at the end. Hmm.
You really must try harder.
Oh, I think I've done goofed. We will not have enough Ninki for Bunshin on time. I think. Are we just barely going to make it? We are going to make it, but there's going to be an intermission now, so wait until after that it actually finishes. Or at least switches properly. There we are. And then I'll just keep Phantom Kamaitachi for if I'm actually out of range. Which I fortunately won't be, because I'm the one dictating it. Oh, shade shift.
Be swallowed by the tide.
Ow.
What? That's not right. How do you like this?
This is an awkward time to not be able to move. I think we got it, just barely. It's going to be my duty to do the limit break. So when is a good time to do that? This is actually a decent time, both in my rotation and boss isn't doing anything.
Good. The frigid blood.
Oh. Oh, nice. Got it. I think that went really well. I didn't actually expect to get the opener so cleanly at the start. There was mistakes though. How many in the chat are doing mock tomes? And when I say mock tomes, I of course mean the Mogmul treasure trove. I'm guessing Makoto was, and K-Black is. And that's Coco. And Matthew is here. Matthew, do you want to join? Yamiari said, I am. I do a few and then take a break. That is a good idea. And Kwasai says I plan to do more of them at some point. Ravio says I'm actually doing the Eden raids. Oh. And Matthew says I tried Sunken Temple of Khan solo yesterday. Wasn't very good at it. Let me think. What would make Sunken Temple of Khan? So, for those that haven't seen this, oh, you're only here for 5 minutes. That's all right. For those that haven't seen it, we have the two previous Tuesday streams. We have been trying to solo content in Final Fantasy XIV, and well, we had some problems that we ran into with Bravelock's Longstop. Weirdly, Bravelock's Longstop was where we suddenly ran into huge problems. Like, Hawk Manor wasn't easy, but Bravelock's Longstop, we actually had to give up. So next time I find put in the a solo stream, we will have to experiment with, can we do it with a healer, because it cannot be done with a tank, at least not by any means that I can do. And if we can't do that, we will have to try without doing minimum item level, and if it's still not possible, and that might very well be, then we will have to see if, like, I'm pretty confident Blue Mage can do it, but maybe Blue Mage can do it minimum item level, you know? Exactly, Coco, the Pelican incident. And Gilano says, don't need anything, so I'm just getting them randomly from roulettes. Oh, alright. And Santos says, the Mogmul Tomestone event is a month or so. That should mean probably May 23rd. Yeah, exactly. The expectation is... So we know right now that the next patch, so 6.4, is coming late May. And they already said this. Usually, the Mogmul Tomestone event happens like almost precisely a month before patch drops. So that means usually the Mogmul Tomestone event happens on a Monday, and then, you know, around 4 weeks later on the Tuesday, that's when it happens. So yeah, 23rd should be the day, so you should have plenty of time. I have checked over the items that I can actually use from the Mogmul Tomestone event, and I've jotted down that I'll need 227 Mog Tomes for all those items. But if I just do a little bit every day, I'll be able to do it easily. So keep that in mind if you have like a huge list of items that you want. If you need like 200 tomestones, or Mogmul tomestones in this case, to buy the items that you want, if you start today, you don't need to grind even 10 tomes per day. Not even 10. So you can just, you know, you could literally just do main scenario like once and see what you get, and then just, you know, queue for something specific that gives you the remaining to reach 10 every day. And you'd be good. That would be plenty to get the stuff that you need. So don't stress yourself over it. I have in the previous Mogmul Tomestone event, I do believe I spammed a battle on the big bridge for like 2 hours twice to get all the things that I needed. You get a little bit tired of hearing those voice lines repeatedly, and it becomes a little boring. Matthew says Count is mostly about stealthing on Blue Mage, which is mainly a practical thing. Is it because there are some mobs you can't defeat with Blue Mage? Because that sounds unlikely. And Santos says, kind of a shame since World of Warcraft's patch is 2nd and 9th for raid, and if 23rd for 14 patch and 30th for Savage, that'll give me only 3 weeks between the two. That's true. That is true. Are you playing both, Santo? Like you're gaming hardcore double MMOs. Is that right? Hi Erika. Guy is gonna become Hokage someday. Wait and see. Just you wait. More fireballs! Bang! I have actually in my off time, not streaming and stuff, I have actually started trying out playing hardcore on World of Warcraft era servers. It's fun. I haven't died yet. But I haven't reached level 20 with anything yet because of this and that. I have switched around with classes a little bit. But it is interesting. I'm playing a duo with a friend actually. So anyone that is completely thrown off by what that is, there's this thing, basically a community thing that is happening in World of Warcraft recently, where people are making characters hardcore, which means that if your character dies once, you have to delete it. And it's like a community thing, so you can only, you know, they will not do dungeons with you if your character is not hardcore. So it means that there's an enormous amount of players on the specific hardcore community server, so the servers that the community is playing hardcore on. But if you're not hardcore, the server might as well be empty. But it's very interesting. It also means that the first few areas of the game is flooded with people. It looks like it's a completely new MMO. That's how many people we're talking. Oh. I almost pulled there because the tank just suddenly stopped in their tracks. That was a little, a little scuffed. I think we got everything. Oh, there's the knockback. Knockback immunity. Owie. Oh no. No! Not a rocket on me, a slow-mo rocket. Look at this. Oh. Ow. Erika says, will Kai become Hokage before I finish the Shadowbringers patch quests? Stay tuned. How close are you, Erika? Me again? Oh. Never mind. Let's see if this becomes the saddest Phantom Kamaitachi in existence. Just getting called upon and then never cast. Yes, Santo says, yeah, playing both games. Mostly patches without between the two, but sometimes they overlap. Especially when one game has content drought and the other gets new patch. It's not. Oh yeah, that is a good point. That is a very good point. Yeah, send it. There's a Phantom Kamaitachi 1 second before it ends. But that is a good point, Santo. The main reason why I find it would find it overwhelming to play both is, of course, because you know, if I was just okay, how should I say it? Just gaming all the time that I had and wasn't also making videos, I might be able to both play Final Fantasy XIV, the stuff that I need to, and also want to, and also be up to date with gearing and stuff like that in World of Warcraft. It just got too much at some point. Oh, I actually thought Erika passed you earlier, Coco. So, hey, you're doing better than I thought you were. so many damage numbers when I both have the clone doing a double hit, and there's the Doton on the ground, and they use the fireball, so there's a double hit there as well. It's crazy. But that is true, Santu. Playing an MMO like World of Warcraft that has a, I would say they have more stuff to do on a weekly basis. Is very helpful to like tide you over when Final Fantasy XIV isn't really doing very much. But yeah, then you'll end up in the situation where at some point it's going to happen that both games have new content in very quick succession, because that's just how it goes. This is risky. I did not get the Suiton there. Woolly Ram says, I prefer playing single player games to switch things up between patches. That's also a good idea. I would also say that single player games also come with the added advantage of the fact that they will... Oh, what are you doing, Reaper? That they wait for you. It's not like if you're suddenly occupied with other stuff that suddenly you're a bunch of patches behind or something. Like, that isn't a thing if you're playing single player games. Although there might have come updates to it. But that just means there's more content. Oh, right. I used both of my defensives for the last one of those. Whoops. There's not really any reason to use that Suiton. The boss is dead. Oh well. Santos says, I mostly just raid log in both games outside of like the first week or two of patches. So it's not that bad. Oh, okay. That of course also changes things if you've literally done everything in Final Fantasy XIV that you want to of side content, right? Then you don't have stuff to do or stuff you could do. Like, if you have everything from the Mogmul Tomestone event, then the fact that it exists is completely inconsequential for you. You're not going to be doing anything different because of that. Really awkward with this particular pull because the dragons are really tanky compared to the rest of the pack. The next thing you have to do, Irika says the next thing I have to do is Anamnesis and Nida. Well, that is a good dungeon. Here's a little fun thing you might want to pay attention to is that the final boss actually has a mechanic that is referential to the final boss of Sastasha. You know, the first dungeon you ever do. Why are you pulling them over there, tank? That is an interesting choice. Especially after the white mage already started pumping, so you can't really stack anything properly because of it. Interesting move. Oop. We should have used Brighton for that. Oh well. Stand on the grates. Suppose so. You'll see what we mean by that, Erika, when you get to the dungeon. I think it's really cool that they do that. That they have like this referential mechanic. I'm attacking the boss. I put all my damage boosts on the boss, guys, so... Oh, and fun fact, I think I've mentioned this before. The mobs, the ads on this boss do so little damage with their AoEs that the only scary part of them is that their explosion gives you a vulnerability stack if you take any damage from it. So you can, if you want to, completely ignore these and just let them do their thing. Like their cone attacks and half room cleaves and stuff like that still hurt. But specifically their self-destruct is completely irrelevant. You can just ignore it. The only scary part is if someone in your group does not know how to dodge other mechanics, then you're going to get a lot of vuln stacks, and you don't want that. That is something you don't want. I almost used Bahava Chakra there. We need it for Bunshin right now. Gilano says the music of Anamnesis is a remake of Sastasha's. Is it? I never noticed that. I thought it was just like Asian music. That is an interesting point. But it does make sense given what you're fighting in that dungeon. Why is everyone attacking the ad? we could have killed the boss by now, guys. That is really funny. That is pretty funny. Kill the trash! Kill the ads! It's going to explode! Boss has less health left than the ad. Kasadi says, Anamnesis is among my favorite dungeons in Shadowbringers. I think a really cool aspect about Anamnesis and Nida is because of the way it's constructed, like, you can still do it, but you can still do wall-to-wall pulls as you usually do, you know, 2 packs at a time. Sort of, you can pull all the way to the wall, but because of the construction of the dungeon, many of these pulls get really awkward. I think that is very interesting. Like, the first bit of the dungeon, the game itself dictates how you get your trash packs, simply because they come in order. The second bit, the mobs are spread out in, like, old school the vault style packs that run at you when you come close, and some of them are just like weirdly placed with ranged mobs. I think I mentioned this when we did Anamnesis and Nida on Small Kai, that there was this pack where there's like 3 casters, and the only way to actually pull it nicely, as a tank is to pull everything past a corner and then run back around the corner to pull everything else that happened to be on the other side of the corner, so that everything like bunches up around this corner. And that's like, these kinds of awkward pulls happen when, or these kind of awkward optimized pulls happen when they're ranged enemies in packs. And there are not enough ranged enemies in dungeons, in my opinion. We need more ranged enemies so that line of sight pulling becomes more of a thing again. We need that. And then the final bit has all those summons, so that you're in that position where do we keep pulling and just ignore that, or do we kill them one at a time, which makes it very complicated what is actually best. These days I feel like people I'm not sure what the strategy is, but I certainly remember when that dungeon was in Expert Roulette, there were players that refused to queue for Expert Roulette as tank because they didn't want to deal with that pull. Because the awkward position is, everyone knows, most people know that the meta is to do wall-to-wall pulls. But if you know that the wall-to-wall pull in this particular dungeon, this particular wall-to-wall pull is actually so hard that like the average random healer that you might get as a tank might not be able to keep you alive through it. Or the average random tank that you get, you might not as a healer be capable of keeping alive through it. Like if you're not a master on your end, you might not be able to carry that. And then people just, instead of just going, it's okay, we just pull it one at a time, they just don't queue. Nah, I'm just not tanking it. I'm just not going to tank it. And I did see that happen occasionally. Coco, do you want to come for the 5, 6, 7, 8? Mihuel says they just wanted the fight to last longer since they were having so much fun. You know what? That's fair. That is a good argument. Do the mechanics right. Why? Because it makes the fight last longer. I don't know if flowers mean yes. But Analysis and Nida is a really good dungeon. I didn't mind it. I just took note that other people did this. Like I have had friends that specifically said, no, I don't want to tank. Not Expert Roulette. Not because we could get Anamnesis and Nida. And whether that means they've done something right or something wrong is an interesting debate, because I would say that it's the fact that the dungeon is really hard to rush is a good thing. But if the meta is so solidly defined that the good players expect everyone to do it, it's actually an interesting problem, you could say, that Final Fantasy XIV might be running into now that I think about it. To some degree, people have agreed that in a Realm Reborn content, you might not be able to do wall-to-wall pulls, because a Realm Reborn content is weird in some ways. But once you get past that, it is generally agreed upon that, well, if you know what you're doing, you can pull everything up to the wall. Which means that if one day the developers decide they don't want to do it like that anymore, then there's going to be a very interesting problem in the community, because surely they will run into the dungeons expecting to wall-to-wall pull it. I know tanks that wall-to-wall pull the newest dungeon their first go. Hey Kyan, better late than never. And if they make a dungeon where they've actually balanced it so that you need to be like, your group needs to be like savage raiders and really, really good at your craft to pull 2 packs, because they've scaled it like that. For I don't know why they would do that, but maybe they would. Then you're going to run into Savage Raiders that are annoyed that the random players that get in Duty Finder can't do it because everyone can, right? It's an interesting balancing problem because I've talked about this in relation to Enmity. If you started playing Final Fantasy XIV in Shadowbringers or Endwalker, you will never have had this problem. But before Endwalker, all jobs, every single job, had some sort of enmity management tool. Like, all DPS jobs, every single one, had this role action called Diversion in Stormblood. Before Stormblood, some of them had Quelling Strikes, which does the same thing. It basically meant for the next 15 seconds, you do half enmity, so that your burst doesn't break the bank. In the meantime, all tanks had actions like combos that did extra enmity. Like as a 1-2-3 combo that, like for instance, Warrior, you could choose between your 1-2-3 combo that ended in you getting the damage buff Storm's Eye, or you could use the Storm's Path combo that healed you and gave you extra beast gauge, or way more fun idea, you use the 1-2-3 combo that 1 does less damage, 2 does not give you extra beast gauge, and 3 does not give you a damage buff. But that weird enmity thing, it managed that because it did more enmity. And yeah, there was also the TP thing, but basically what I'm saying is that all jobs had to manage their enmity. The problem is that the game never really explains to you what enmity is, especially not if you're a DPS or a healer. So you will have this action that says something something enmity, and you're going to go, what does that even mean? Like, just as I'm sitting here, I'm actually not able to explain to you what the word enmity means, because I'm honestly not entirely sure. But I'm assuming it means something with hate. Just based on the fact that it's what makes enemies hit you. Hey Linkstar, I'm doing well, I hope you're doing well too. So you read this action that says that you do half as much enmity. You might actually read that and go, well, I don't know if I want that. Maybe I want this certain amount of enmity that I am making. And if I want that, then, well, surely I should not have that. Enmity is enmity. Indeed, I have to. Math is math! Kellerman says, enmity is the aspect or feeling of hostility towards someone or something. Well, that sounds approachable. And Holy Ram says it's old English. Well, now, I think we've hit the nail on the head with that one. Perfectly up Final Fantasy. What happened to our tank? Perfectly up the alley of Final Fantasy XIV to have this old English style. And Linkstar beat Endwalker today. Congratulations! Did you enjoy the grand finale? No wonder healers generated. But yeah, you read that action that says that it makes you do less enmity, and ultimately, if you don't know the word enmity, then it means nothing to you. The only thing you can surmise from that is that, well, now this diversion effect means that you do half as much of it, whatever it is. You don't know if it's something that makes you do good damage or bad damage. The enmity is what you feel when you look at Asahi. Correct. Absolutely. So you look at these actions that do that, and let me put it like this. if I think Santo might find this particular example relatable. So in World of Warcraft, there are these things called Mythic Plus dungeons. World of Warcraft has gone to great lengths to try and make it like an esport, you could say. So that you get to see tournaments where the best players in the world at doing Mythic Plus dungeons duke it out. So you see the absolute optimal ways to do a dungeon. You get to see that. What this results in is the specific classes and specializations that the best players at the game decide to use become the meta. Like, those are the only classes that people will want to bring for a while, at least the metagamers, right? And they will exclusively want to use the optimal pathways through dungeons, because like old school Final Fantasy XIV dungeons that haven't been reworked yet, you have multiple ways to go through the dungeon. You of course want to use the most effective way to do that. And what happens is that these metagamers are often themselves actually not good enough to do these kinds of pulls. So they're going to do it and then they're going to wipe. And who's going to get blamed? The rest of the group. Stuff like that. So you see Final Fantasy XIV in Stormblood, Heavensward and A Realm Reborn. If you see the best players do get their world first, not that like Final Fantasy XIV ever put a lot of effort into showing those off in particular, but you see that they do specific things. In particular, the tanks don't use their tank stance because it makes them do less damage. Then your tanks are not going to do that, but that only works if your entire team are using their enmity management tools. But many of your party members do not know what enmity means. They do not know what enmity means, so they will not use diversion, for example. And exactly, Alejandro. The problem is that you will not be able to see everything that's happening. You will simply not be able to see the reason why the things that are happening are working. You will miss something. For example, if you were to watch a world first clear of the newest Savage Raid or Ultimate or what have you, you will almost definitely not see what everyone's doing. So if you're watching a tank POV, you will probably not notice that all of the melee DPS, or all of the DPS for that matter, are using diversion at very specific times or something like that. So, whoops. Uh-oh. That was weird. I stood still and suddenly the mobs went at me. I suppose they moved positions. But that is ultimately the idea. So what happens is that if you know what enmity is, and you are in like a coordinated raid group, do your weekly clears and it's fun, then you will find it annoying that the developers decide to simplify the game for no reason and remove a mechanic that you liked, right? But everyone else who does not understand what enmity even is, what happens in their groups is that the tank can't hold aggro because the tank is trying to do the optimal thing. They're trying to do the right thing, but no one else is actually doing the enmity thing. And everyone is pointing fingers at each other, which ultimately is going to, you know, not be a very enjoyable experience for anyone. So the developers just delete the mechanic, almost. Like, they basically simplify the mechanic so much that it might as well not be there. And now the only people that are really, I think, really missing it are the people that knew how to manage it in the first place, which is understandable. I also sort of miss using like managing Enmity. I thought it was an interesting feature, and I didn't mind it. Given that I came from World of Warcraft, right? I have had to deal with it. I've mained tank in most of the time I've played World of Warcraft. So it's not weird to me. It was, uh-oh, the healer's dead. Coco, do you have them? Nice. But what I'm getting at with that is that mechanics and features that ultimately complicate the game more than make it fun. Oh, tank is slow again. We keep an eye on them. It seems like Final Fantasy XIV's development team is willing to just, as Alejandro says, yeeters deleters. Just get rid of them. And, well, gesturing broadly at everything, I think we're reaching the point where there isn't very much left to simplify. Recently, we have started to simplify dots out of the game, because it's easier to get maximum DPS if you don't have to deal with dots and managing them. Many fireballs, and another one. And another one. Let's see, Dr. Caesar's Palace, MD, says I only know what Enmity is because I remember having to manage it versus Behemoth and Monster Hunter World. Oh, indeed. That is also why it had Enmity, and that it was called Enmity, was because it was, of course, a Final Fantasy XIV monster. And also in regards to tomestones of mendacity, oh, aren't you guys looking forward to having elegant tomestones of comedy in next month? Oh, I think we might wipe. Or maybe we have it? The tank isn't doing too well. Oh, there's the Super Blight. Did you hear it? Oh, immune. Classic mentor. Oh, classic Kai. Oh, am I that bad about it when I'm streaming? We pulled half a room in Aurum. I don't think we pulled half a room. Yeah. Was it half a room? I feel like it was just one pack. Like one extra pack that I pulled by accident. But maybe I remember wrong. Oh, I don't think I want to do that. when it's in the weird fog state like that, it reflects everything. I don't think the healer realizes that the massive amount of damage we're taking is from the dot that they can easily use Isuna on. Actually, I think the healer's so focused on just trying to survive that they have no idea and no time to look. I should have used Limit Break. What is Isuna? Is that a snack? Just in case you mean it, Isuna is the healer ability that removes removable debuffs. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Healer's dead. Boss is dead. Not sure. Sadi says, I would have liked to experience the aggro management aspect of raiding, but alas, I was adamant at that point that I won't do raiding. That's fair. Oh, Gilano's here, and Kasadi's here. I had a similar yet different thing. When I started playing Final Fantasy XIV back in Stormblood, I specifically started playing Final Fantasy XIV to get away from raiding. Because when I was playing World of Warcraft, I would start playing and be like, it's okay, I will just do some dungeons, do some casual content, and then I would somehow inadvertently land myself in like a hardcore raid team. Somehow I would always do that. Well, semi-hardcore, or maybe casual depending on the definition. I would usually raid at least 3 nights, 4 hours every week. Like, there was this one time in Legion where I specifically had said, I'm done raiding. I'm not doing like hard content. Maybe I'll do a Mythic Plus every now and then, but that's it. And then one of my super close friends, like he was like, "That's okay. You can just be a casual in the raiding guild I'm in." I said, "Okay, that's fine. I don't have a guild to be in, so that I suppose that works." And then this one time they needed a replacement tank. And I had a reputation of being really good at tanking. So I subbed in this one time, and lo and behold, next week they had the problem that the same tank wasn't available again. And that meant that very quickly it went from I'm replacing this tank this one time to I am now the guild's second tank. And I didn't want to raid. So at some point I went into Final Fantasy XIV and went, I'm not going to be raiding. So I saw the normal raids and went, no, that's probably also difficult. I don't know what difficulty that is in relation to World of Warcraft. So I'm just not going to do it. I see the Alliance raids and go, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do LFR looking for raid from World of Warcraft, if it's even that. I don't want that, so I never did Lighthouse, even though Lighthouse was new when I got to max level the first time. Like Ridurana Lighthouse from Stormblood. I heard my Freed company complain about the math robot and stuff like that, but I never did it because I wasn't going to be raiding. I think I didn't raid until like Shadowbringers at all, like normal raiding. But I have raided a ton in World of Warcraft. So I get that you chose you didn't want to raid. Like, that is completely understandable. I'm not really raiding now, right? Alejandro says, I joined at the tail end of Shadowbringers. I don't know if I'm saying the name correctly. I'm guessing it's either Alejandro or Alejandro, depending on what, like, how you want it to be said. Is it a J or an H? Is it supposed to be an H? I joined at the tail end of Shadowbringers, and quite a big jump in difficulty of content from Stormblood was welcoming but a bit exhausting. Yeah, Shadowbringers was a big jump. And Woolly Ram says, while I'm no giga chat gamer, the lack of complexity in Final Fantasy XIV has removed its staying power. There's little reason to subscribe for more than a month after 2 or 3 patches. Yeah, I can see what you mean. I can see what you mean. And Alejandro says, simple job kits was helpful when I was tackling harder content. And that is like, this is the key argument. If the game has hard content, like really, really hard content, like ultimates, and they can make those really complicated because the toolkit isn't that complicated, right? So the main difficulty comes from the fight itself. Then it means that the developers can effectively please both the hardcore raiders, but also the hyper casuals at the same time. Because they can make the normal content decently approachable for everyone, make the rotations for most jobs at a basic level super simple. So that like there might be a skill ceiling to strive for, but if the skill floor is really low, then everyone can participate. And the Savage Raiders and the Ultimate Raiders, which sometimes is the same thing, they get their content in the raids. And the thing is, if the jobs were harder, like if the jobs were more complicated, then it would like, and the fights were equally as difficult as they are now, it would make the fights even harder, which means that either the content would have more staying power, which might be a good thing when you think about it, or they would have to tone down the fights themselves to compensate. But the thing is, if they made the jobs more complicated on average, then they would scare away some of the hyper casuals. And the Savage Raiders would be equally happy about it while they have new content. That's the key thing here, is that the bottom line for Square Enix, really, is the same regardless of whether the Savage Raiders take 1 week or 3 weeks or even 4 weeks to beat the newest Savage Raid. Technically, they only get more value out of it if it takes you 5 weeks. And given what we know about World First races, that doesn't really happen. Right? That doesn't really happen. So instead of trying to reach to satisfy all the Savage Raiders as much as possible and fail because they won't be able to do better, it's easier for them to reach down and grab the hyper casuals and give them content. And there's a good chance that there's a lot more hyper casuals than there are hardcore Savage Raiders. Like, this is a common problem in MMOs. And Fasadi says, I personally got talked into trying raids. And I do agree, Santo. I also wish the jobs were more complex. And Fasadi says, and the reason why I didn't wish to raid in the first place was I was afraid of failure. The scary part about that is if people are toxic, it gets really scary. And Woolly Ram says, this strategy of appealing to the bottom edges of the player base leaves the middle high and dry. That is true. The problem is that how do you satisfy the high end? If you make the jobs more complicated, that does work because it makes more casual content as it is right now harder, which makes it more interesting and have more staying power in general, right? But that's not like that. Of course, that's the thing. You're sacrificing having casual content to have more savage content effectively by doing that. It's a really difficult balance, and I'm not saying that I want them to do that, but I'm saying that I can understand why this happens. That is basically what I'm saying, is I understand why this stuff happens. Oh, and Vasadi came from League of Legends. Oh dear. And Alejandro says, I'm quite opposite because I wanted to raid in Final Fantasy XIV. WoW had too much mandatory side stuff to grind, exactly. And the biggest reason because I could experience old raids. And Kilaman says, I'm roughly in the middle, so casual Savage Raider, large casual content player, and find plenty of reasons to stay subbed. So the thing is, if you like to collect stuff and finish things and get things in Final Fantasy XIV, there is so much stuff that you can gather that there is an enormous amount of content you can do. But if you don't care about mount farming, or you don't care about titles, or you don't care about minions, you don't care about all that, you just want to do some really difficult fights, then there is the current Savage Raid and the current and all of the ultimates really. And then you start to have to get creative by doing old Savage Raid synced or minimum item level and things like that. Or do really weird stuff, right? So I can see why it would be annoying if you want to play this game, you love the game, but there isn't content for you. Like, that really sucks. And Santos says, I mostly stay sub because I've not done all ultimates yet, but after finishing DSR on top and next Savage tier, I can see myself unsubbing until 7.0. I've heard others say that too. On a completely more focused note, next up is leveling roulette. Do you two, Quasadi and Gilano, want to join? Or are you just hanging out? Now for the adverts. Aerodel TV. That's a good one. Woolly Ram says, I want moderately difficult content and distinctive jobs, which I find in single player games. Yeah, I think on the one hand, Final Fantasy XIV advertising itself as, well, saying, like Yoshi P himself saying that they want you to only play if you want to. And they intend the game to be that you can just, subscribe for a month, do the content that they released, and then you leave for 3 months. Like, that's the intent, that you could do that. That isn't super helpful, if you're sitting there wanting to play more. This is something that you can experience in single player games or MMOs or any multiplayer game, any game really, is that you could finish the game and go, I'm not finished, I'm not done, I wanted more. And the only thing you can do is fight the final boss again, because you've reached the peak, there is nothing else left. I could have set that to scale for us, my bad. I suppose that works, sort of. We could have had the level 81. No, wait, we couldn't. Never mind. I think it would actually have denied us because Coco would be too high level for any of the dungeons she has. But like, I had that experience I've had that experience with some games where I wanted more game, but there wasn't anything left. And this is basically what I think a lot of players are experiencing with Final Fantasy XIV also, is that because the jobs are relatively simple to some degree, you master them, or you find a lot of the jobs boring, which means you have less content. And because the hard content, there is only so much of it, and you manage to finish all of it, then you have nothing left to do. So many fireballs. And I'm like, it's not that I think I have the solution, I don't. As I said, the key thing I'm saying when I say that there is a good reason why the development team might prioritize making more casually friendly content, and then just as a side thing count, like also include hard content, is not to say that it's the best solution. It's more to say that I don't know what else they could do. Like, we don't know the numbers. I'm not sure how big a percentage of the player base actually does the newest Savage raid while it's new. Do any of you know that? Do any of you know, like I think some people like try to take measures of this. I think I've heard that the percentage of players that do it vary greatly from region to region, but I'm not sure. One of them is ranged. That makes it really awkward. But like, imagine if 10%, just as a guess, if 10% of the player base finishes the current Savage raid while it is current and relevant and new, then it's almost like when they make a new Savage raid, they're making content for like 10% of the player base, right? Which is maybe a bit... it feels difficult to justify if they can make slightly easier content and then everyone does it. But I don't know what it would take, because I think we've talked about it. I don't know if we've talked about it on stream, but we have certainly talked about it on Discord. The fun fact that people loved the variant dungeons and criterion dungeons, but it like fizzled out quickly because the rewards weren't good enough. And I can't imagine that they didn't realize that when they released it. Like, surely they realized that if you do somewhat difficult content, but there's not really any gear rewards for it, but it's like almost difficult, like actual Savage content, or even maybe even harder than that, then why would you do that when you could just invest your time in doing Savage content, right? And as Woolly Ram says, I would happily do Criterion if it gave gear. Exactly. I wonder what it would take. Would people be satisfied if it gave a lot of glamour gear, for example? Or does it have to be gear upgrades? I've talked about this before also, in the way that because of how big of a part of the gearing process that the crafters play, that means that if they make it easier for players to gear up in any way, then it makes crafters less important. If that makes sense. Like, the big payday for crafters, as far as I know, is a combination of getting the gear sets crafted when the new sets are new. Like, the completely new crafted gear sets are worth a fortune when they're completely new, because some players want them on day one. And then The rest of it comes a lot from like selling tinctures and selling buff food and stuff like that. But the big payout is on patch day and then a few days forward from getting their crafted armor sets sold. And that means that like that would actually make crafters significantly less valuable if more gear options were applied. And I know that's a little excessive to claim that that is what it would take. But I do know players that looks at the crafted gear, right? The crafted gear that is like I630, or no, 610, sorry, 610, and can be augmented to 620, and go, nah, I'll make do with 610 gear from the normal raid. I'll collect that eventually. And I will just get the Lunar gear eventually. And when the Alliance raid comes out, they'll go, well, I'll just use the Alliance raid gear to like gear up eventually. I don't need it right now, so it's okay. And they will take an eternity to gear up simply to avoid having to spend a single gil on gearing, which sounds incredible. But imagine if it was even easier than that. Then it would be impossible to get players to actually buy gear, right? Outside of Savage Raiders. Ice and lightning, we need fire. Step in the fire ring, at least momentarily. Step in the fire ring or suffer the consequences. So the trick is that he has like a buff that is like the invert of the icon that matches. And he also says, my cup runneth over with lightning and ice, which means you need to grab fire. Grab the one he didn't mention, right? I'm mentioning this very clearly because a lot of players get killed by that boss because they don't understand the mechanic, and usually it's just one person, which means the rest of the group kills the boss just fine, so that player doesn't learn the mechanic. They just never learn the mechanic and they just walk away from the boss not understanding a thing. See, Killarman says, I think that's where I diff. I do things for glam or to just have fun with it. Have fun doing it with friends or FC mates and or teaching them as well. To sit in voice chat and live. That's also understandable. And Woolly Ram says, I don't care about glam. I want relevant gear from flexible, moderately difficult content. That sounds like World of Warcraft. That does sound like that actually sounds like something you could get in World of Warcraft. The problem is that because there is an almost endless opportunity to gear more and more and more in World of Warcraft, what you're going to experience is that people don't want to do the content in an inappropriate gear. They want to do the content over-geared. Like, they want their groups to have the best gear so that it's easy. But that is true, Kelamin. There's so much to do in Final Fantasy XIV. There is so much to do. So if you like a lot of different content, there's plenty for you to do, but it is understandable that some people play a game for a specific set of content. That is unfortunately a reality of MMOs. I can't remember if it was, I think it was Just Drive Hayes that talked about this, that there are a handful of the best MMOs that we know these days, like, you know, people talk about World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy and Elder Scrolls Online and Guild Wars 2, because each of them are actually masters of some specific niche that every single other MMO just can't match. There might be MMOs that do, like, on average, more interesting stuff than Final Fantasy XIV. But the things that Final Fantasy XIV does extremely well, it does better than basically the competition, right? And that's ultimately what matters. And Gilano says, we have my young though. And like, if you're not beating like one specific niche, like if you don't master one thing, then there isn't a reason to specifically pick Final Fantasy XIV over a different MMO, right? For example, I would argue that World of Warcraft is the master of making raiding content when they do good expansions, which isn't always the case. And Final Fantasy XIV are extremely good at storytelling. And they're also very good at making a very, very beautiful game. But if you're here for raiding content, and you're here because ultimates and maybe savage content are, in your opinion, better here than what, for example, World of Warcraft can offer, then you run into the problem that Final Fantasy XIV might be able to make a really good savage raid, but they don't make a lot of them. They don't make that many of them. They make like one really good steak once or twice a year. And the rest of the year you'll just have to deal with scraps. Meanwhile, World of Warcraft gives you a little something very often. Guess who didn't use a limit break? It was me. Again. It's like a classic whenever I'm doing these streams where I'm melee DPS. Oh right, there's a limit break we could use. But right now I'm in the middle of using my cooldowns. And then after I've used my cooldowns, I look at the boss's health bar and go, oh right, the limit break. And the boss dies. Yeah, exactly, Killaman. For 6.4, hardcore raiders would have 4, maybe 5 fights. And even an extreme encounter would be a little bit... I would say, like, the key thing to remember is that extremes are tuned to be easier than Savage. So if you're enjoying Savage, perhaps Savage and Ultimates, then extremes feel like almost like they're easy, right? As soon as you've learned them, it's just easy farm. I would think. I believe I did a diamond weapon a few times when it was current back in Shadowbringers. The reason I say I believe is because I can't remember if I did it more than once or twice, and I wouldn't be able to prove it very well, given that I don't think that, like, I could easily have done it in Endwalker, right? And I didn't record it. So it's difficult. It is difficult to make difficult content and satisfy everyone. As I said, if you want to make a really good game, you need to make like a few things that make it stand out that people will play it for. And MMOs have this thing where they tend to want to make sure that there's plenty of stuff to do for everyone, which means that they have to do a little bit of everything, which means that there's more things being developed for the game than they have the capacity to do all the time. So there's things that are left in the dust, old abandoned content that didn't work out, no one cared about enough. There's content that people want, but it's not enough people, so it doesn't get added to enough, or it's difficult to make. There's so many things they need to do that they can't do everything. And that's just like the reality of the situation, is that they have to focus on something, and Final Fantasy XIV seems to focus a lot on their story. Still, I wonder if we could convince the developers to tone it a little bit down with how incredible they're making the cutscenes recently, if we could maybe get more raid encounters or something. Could you imagine? Killam says, EX5 was my first high-end content and now I sleep through that on random side jobs while teaching it. Well, there you go. Next up is Trials. Trial Roulette. More gameplay, less visual novel. But see, the problem is, with doing that, is that there are probably a lot of players that are playing Final Fantasy XIV because of the incredible story that would feel let down if suddenly they stop doing that. How about extreme level dungeons with equivalent gear? Yes, please. Yes, please. Give me that. I want Mythic Plus for Final Fantasy XIV. I want to see Sastasha Mythic Plus. It would be so good. I have said this before, but when I saw them talk about variant dungeons and Criterion dungeons, I hoped it would be something like that. Like it would feel a little bit like that, but then it wasn't really. It wasn't really that. Then I could grey pass Sastasha, could you imagine? Oh, I moved an inch during my Tenchi Jin and lost it because I was too scared of standing still when the knockback was coming. Oh, my Tenchi Jin! No! My damage! My damage! Wham! Wham! Wait, that was just 3, huh? That was an interesting time to use Battle Voice. Or Veil Ultimate when? Good, that would be incredible. Bam! Oh. I expected it to be a little squishier than that. I think I've been spoiled by doing it on extreme unsynced. But I think it would be a great way to reuse content. They even they already have a name for it. They could just make Unreal content, like they already do. Like make a few dungeons Unreal. I think it would be so good. The real killer would be the burn extreme. Yeah, we did that earlier. I think people would at least finally learn what things you need to use Isuna on and things like that. You would learn to actually deal with each encounter. Like, I don't talk about that particular prospect that much, but I do recommend, if you want to learn, like, in more detail what a dungeon does, to not do wall-to-wall pulls on your first go. That was a bit loud. Simply so that you have a chance to actually identify what all of the enemies in the dungeon actually do, without like all the telegraphs like blobbing on top of each other so you can't see a thing. But the reason why I don't really talk that much about that idea is because, like, you don't really need to do that, right? none of the trash packs are strong enough to warrant that in most cases. There are a few exceptions, but almost always it does not matter that much. I should have done that futon way earlier. Oh, there it is. This is an annoying fight to be a ninja, since the buffs go on you. Now, I think we have a decent reopener. I thought it would make you slide when that happens. Guess not. Is that only on extreme? Or is it later? Oh boy. Fuck. So there it is. Was that, Linksa, was that finally? Oh, finally actually used limit break. The LB is real. I saw the health of the boss and I'm like, I feel like Shinru is like weirdly squishy. Because 24% is maybe a bit early normally. I also noticed that the Dark Knight cast TBN on me. I don't know if they thought that I was going to get hit or what happened. Enjoy work, Woody Ram. Pink lizard cat. I don't know why that was so loud, Coco. Was that roar like super loud for you guys as well? Like in game, I mean, sure, also in the stream, I'm sure it was loud for you because it was loud for me, but was it loud in game? The entire fight was ear-shattering. That was really strange. Oh, I think I know why. I think I know why it was really loud for me, the roar specifically. I think maybe the roar is categorized as voice, while the rest of the sounds are just, you know, sound effects and ambience and stuff like that. So because my voice is increased significantly, it just sounds like Shinru is like hanging out with a huge amplifier next to him. And if you're thinking, why would he have voices on like twice the volume as everything else? When we're doing small Kai on Saturdays, it's actually really difficult to hear voices sometimes. For some reason, some cutscenes, people just whisper. For some reason. Alliance raid next. Are you ready for Alliance raid? But I would love it if they added more difficult 4-man content. I've talked about this before, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this issue. Is that I can find 4 people. Well, I can find 3 people to play with me. Even off stream. I can do that. I can do that. And we four can have fun with learning an encounter, even if it's really hard. Because we're just four, it's a lot more manageable to learn it, to figure out what's wrong and things like that, and talk it out. If we're 8, for some reason, it's suddenly a lot more overwhelming. But if we were 4, it could be done, even if I brought some of my friends that I know wouldn't be able to do Savage. If it's just 4 close friends, no issue. So if they added hard format content, that would be great. And you could say, well, you have deep dungeons, and that is interesting, but it feels like it's very high stakes as soon as you get a few floors in, right? So that sort of like makes it so that at the start it's low stakes, so it isn't scary, and then as you get further, you suddenly realize that it is actually really scary to make a single mistake. It becomes really problematic. And that's just like a reality of it. That's why I would love to see hard dungeons. Crystal Tower! Who's surprised? Who was betting on us getting the near raid or something? Yeah, Robert says, the whisper makes everything more dramatic. That is true. The thing is that it would be weird if characters always just talked loudly at each other, but I would also like... Kasadi says, why am I marked? I think you're marked because you're a tank. Some healers like to do that, some DPS like to do that. Mark the tank so they can see it. I think it's just because you're the tank. The dongs of the ninjas preparing. Dong, dong, dong. I'm just going to nuke this guy. Take this, Valafol. You look different from in Final Fantasy X? Ow. Do anybody need a Doton? And Kosadis also said, last time I did P8S, I seem to have left my music on 100. Well, Whitestone Black is a bop. So I can see how that would happen. Let's see. Linkstar says I started leveling Gunbreaker and now my carpal tunnel is back. Oh. Did you unlock continuation recently? Is that what happened? Because that one is mean. You haven't. What job did you what job did you complete Endwalker with? Warrior. I suppose Gunbreaker has a little bit more OGCD stuff. Even at the very start, but if you haven't gotten continuation yet, then the bad news are it's only getting worse from here. That is unfortunately how it goes. Oh yeah, I didn't want my cooldowns, it's fine. It's so cool. Yeah, I get that. I hope you can find a way to play it without it being too painful at the very least. Side says Whitestone Black is exactly my jam. It is really good. Ninja at level 50. Who wants to cast Hooton several times in a fight? Hands in the air. Show of hands. Mid-fight Hooton. I think the big problem with casting Hooton mid-combat like that, and the reason why it feels so awkward is because it's gone later on. Like, I wish we could just get Huraijin at level 50 instead of 60. That would be nice. Oh, look! I have markers for this. Apparently I have markers for this. In the box of random markers that I have. That's why I play warrior and summoner, so I don't hurt myself. If you find the Titan part of the summoner rotation, if you have it at level 86 at least, if you find the Titan part a little bit problematic, that is kind of how it feels to do continuation. Oh, excellent. Only at 83. Well, it is. Suddenly you just saw everyone on on Alliance B run forward for some reason. I don't know what they're doing. Finally! Wow! So you need 4 people on like Alliance A needs 4 people on the platform to enable Alliance B to attack, and Alliance B needs 4 people on Alliance for Alliance C to attack, and C needs 4 for Alliance A to attack. And suddenly Alliance B just went charging ahead into battle. Meaning that there was like 1 person on the platform. I don't know why they suddenly did that, but that ultimately meant that we suddenly couldn't attack. And then I announced in, you know, Alliance chat that you need 4 people, and then 2 people ran back, so they were up to 3. And we just sat there, looking at 2 people, waiting for the door to open. Which is not going to open if they're standing there. So that was really funny. That's what happened. So remember, you have to stand on the glowing platform in that room until it stops glowing. It stops glowing when the alliance that you're helping is done. So you don't have to look at anything. You can just turn your camera like this and just look at the platform. You can leave when it stops glowing. If you're ranged, it might help if you, you know... Whoops. I had a little latency glitch there, so my Viton didn't come out. Apparently. Oh well, we got a bunny instead. Ravio says, I had problems with that alliance raid today as well. Huh. Well, it is funny, because new players to Final Fantasy XIV feels like it comes in waves. So it might be because there's like a new wave of players or something. So they are having problems with the dungeon. I don't think so. I don't feel like there's that many sprouts. But I wouldn't know for certain. But those are the kinds of reasons why I... Oh, you're taking the stairs. But it is it is one of the reasons why I don't really like getting Labyrinth of the Ancients or World of Darkness, is because those are two encounters, like those have encounters where you need to split up your raid in a certain way, and a lot of your raid will not at any moment look at what team they're in. They will just run somewhere random. It feels like, at the very least, that they just go random. And that makes it really, really annoying. Ow. Ravio says, until last week I didn't know there was stairs. I just realized there were stairs now that I saw Gilano go on the stairs. But when I saw the stairs, it, like, obviously there's stairs, like, it perfectly makes sense. It just never occurred to me that there would be stairs. I've never used them. You tried out healer today, Linkster? Yeah, we just jump, exactly. Why was it an instant regret? Was it too stressful? Oh, which healer did you try? Is maybe also a pretty good question. White mage. Oh. Yeah, a problem with healing when you're just learning it is that for the first many levels, you basically don't have any ability heals. So if you aren't like ahead on healing, then you can easily fall behind. And if something surprises you, there's nothing you can do. It's just over. My tank pulled everything. Yeah, that commonly happens. Did you wipe? Or did you survive? You survived. Well, then it isn't that bad, is it? Then I think it's good enough. No one else did. Oh. Oh. Well, the thing is that if you're new to a role, it's not a bad idea to just say it in your group when you're starting. just say that it's your first time or whatever you need to. Like, I'm new to healing. Sometimes the tanks will be a little, like, take it a little slower for you. Other times the tanks don't care, unfortunately. I think if I wiped with a healer that was sort of like, if I landed into a dungeon and the healer at the very start, like at the top of the dungeon, right as we begin, start by saying, by the way, I'm kind of new to healing, I would almost certainly say, let's try pulling big anyway. And then if we wipe, then I'll change. Because the thing is that if you don't try the big pulls, then it's just going to stay scary. And the easiest way to get acquainted with the big pulls is to do them anyway. I'm not saying that you have to do them, but most groups will expect that you do them, so not practicing them and not being prepared for them is ultimately going to hurt you. Like, it's not going to get better by you avoiding them. But the next dungeon will probably go better, Lingstar. If you choose to do another one, that is. I'm a healer virgin, please be gentle. Ravio says, I have a macro with a text informing the others I'm new to tanking, for example. I think that's a good idea. As I said, it doesn't work with everyone. He didn't know what mitigation was. Oh. Yeah. So, as a mentor... Ooh. Was it the hammer mentor crown? Was it like the mentor crown with a hammer next to it? Or was it the sword? Do you remember? So, just going, let me just go over that real quick. So the way that mentor crowns work is that there are 3 different types of crowns. There's the crown with the hammer, and there's the crown with the sword, and then there's the crown, the big crown, the one that I'm using. To get the crown with the hammer, you need to have done a certain amount of crafting. But to put it lightly, the amount of crafting you actually have to do is not difficult. It's not like you have to do like a mastercraft recipe or something like that. You just have to craft a bunch of things and have crafters and gatherers leveled. It's not actually a sign that you're good at crafting. So it's actually really easy to get the crafting mentor's crown. The crown with the sword, I believe it requires you to have 1,500 player commendations, and then like 1 job level to 90 of each role. And of course, complete the story, things like that. But the thing is, having 1,500 commendations doesn't necessarily mean that you're good at the game. It doesn't mean that you're good at the game necessarily. Like, yes, if you're really, really good at the game, you're probably getting more commendations than if you're not. But how often do you give the astrologian in your raid team the commendation because they gave you cards? I'm just saying. It's very often that people just go, well, the astrologian healed okay, they gave me cards, I don't have anyone else that I want to give my commendation to. It's very common that people give the commendation to the astrologian simply because the astrologian gave them the card buffs. So that means that astrologian is very easy to farm commendations with, for example. Just queue for content where you can really shine, where there's, you know, raid trials, where there's 7 other players, always queue alone, so there's 7 other players that can commend you. And then you just go for it. And eventually you get it. Doesn't mean you're good at the game. Not at all. And the big mentor crown, like this fancy schmancy one that I have, just means that you have both. If you both have the crafter mentor crown and the combat mentor crown, then you can put this on if you want. Again, doesn't mean necessarily that you're good at the game, because the requirements to get the mentor crown isn't to be good at the game, it's just really to have done stuff. But you would hope that the players that put on the mentor crown know what they're doing. I've heard the excuse that if you see a mentor that plays extremely poorly, they also have to learn jobs for the first time. But there's a big difference between tanking for the first time as a warrior and then mixing up the GCD stuff, like getting your attack combos wrong, forgetting what the warrior specific cooldowns are. But you have a combat mentor crown, so presumably you know how to tank with the job you have at level 90, right? Like, you have one tank at level 90, surely you learned something. Surely you know how to use Rampart. At the very least, you know how to use Rampart. So that one doesn't sit well, right? But it's much more common to hear excuses, at least in my opinion, from crafting mentors. Specifically because technically they don't even need to have leveled all jobs. They don't even need to have leveled one job to max, as far as I know. Only crafters, nothing combat. So it's awkward. But another argument is also that mentors are there to help and teach the other players. So if the mentor plays poorly, they can at least show the other players how to go about doing so gracefully and in a friendly way. How can I explain that? Like, if you make a mistake, then the mentor should be the one that explains themselves in a more polite and friendly way than the not mentor, right? So they teach the other players how to do that. How do you go about learning a fight for the first time? The mentor doesn't have to master the fight, they don't have to know all of it, but they can teach the other players how to go about learning a fight. That's also mentoring. But if the mentor goes in and doesn't say a word and just wipes because they're not using their cooldowns and things like that, then you're not mentoring, right? Rabio says, I mean, I sometimes forget I'm using a different job from what I'm used to. So like muscle memory wants to do Reaper rotation, but I'm playing Red Mage. That's pretty funny. By the way, are you guys ready for normal raids? Also, Gilano mentions you can become PvP mentor without having ever done any PvP. It just comes with the crown. Isn't that just part of having the combat mentor? Inquisati says, I am no mentor, so I never use my crown. I mostly have it for mentor roulette. Just remember that when you queue for mentor roulette, it forces the combat mentor hat on you, so... if you queue for mentor roulette, you have to be a mentor. It actually... Like, that's the key thing, is if you see a mentor crown in a dungeon, like the big mentor crown, the one that I'm using, or the hammer crown, like the crafter crown, that means that they are probably doing normal roulettes of some sort. Or they're queued specifically for the dungeon, or whatever. But if it's the sword, then there is a really high possibility that they ended up there with mentor roulette. And if they're really cross with you for not doing well or something, it's probably because they queued mentor roulette hoping for something easy and simple, and got something that wasn't easy and simple. Because they want to farm achievements. Because there is a mount attached to doing an obscene amount of mentor roulettes, which obviously results in a significant amount of players getting the Mentor Crown, unlocking Mentor Roulette, and all that, specifically so that they can farm the mount. Instead of doing it because they want to teach people. Like, I remember quite a long time ago, I talked with some people about it, and I said, honestly, it shouldn't be a crown. It should be something like, I don't know, like a watering can or something like that. Something really, really boring, so that people don't choose it and grab it because it looks cool. And the reason why it should be a watering can is because you're watering the sprouts. Should be a dunce cap. Now that's a little bit mean. It could also be a tree. The sprout has grown up and become a mentor. But it should not be a crown. It should not be a crown. That is something people would like. People choose. Some players will grab that mentor crown icon as glamour for their name. Like for their name tag, essentially. Which is a really bad idea. Like, I have the Mentor Crown on while we're doing this, and you see me make mistakes, but the thing is that I make the mistake, point out that I made the mistake, or acknowledge that I messed up, and apologize. You know, I try to be graceful in my mistakes, and try to be friendly and helpful as a mentor should be, and at least someone gets taught from my mistake. And if someone asks for advice, I give it. But I don't play perfectly when I'm streaming, for example. That would be a very boring stream, because then I would just not be talking and just be focused on doing the big sweaty try-hard rotation and nothing else. The LB isn't ready yet. I don't think we will get LB in this fight. Or did someone use it and I just didn't notice? Yeah, I always forget the LB, that is also true. And I also often call attention to me forgetting it. When almost always when I'm doing content as a mage or a ranged physical, I use the limit break on the final pack before the final boss, which is recommended in most content. What is the blue flag? That just means you're in party. That just means you're in party with someone. And while we're on the subject, the purple flag, which you might also see sometimes, means that you're in a cross-world party with someone. Which means if you join a party listed in the party finder, that typically happens. Like, that is more rare, but it happens. I believe Matthew had that showing earlier when they were queuing for something. And the green flag is looking for party. That's true. I think, actually, if you go into, like, edit search info, you can actually see a bunch of them here. Like, the green one is actually like an inverse flag, where it's like the outer part that is colored in instead. Because instead of being in a party, you're looking for one, so you're not in a party. That's why the flag isn't filled in. Smart. I think this one is particularly funny. Looking to melt materia. I want to pop Oh. I want to popularize the concept of people using the looking to melt materia as the name glamour instead of the mentor crown. It's a golden, like a golden crystal-y shaped thing. It's pretty cool. It could work. You want your sprout back. I understand. I've heard it's often I hear sprouts that are really scared when they lose their mentor, when they lose their sprout icon, because I think I've talked about this on streams before, but because you learn from like people talking about it that there's a lot of players that actively give sprouts extra leeway. Like they are far more accepting of mistakes if it's a sprout making them compared to a non-sprout. So that means when you lose your sprout, you suddenly have to contend with however much players are willing to accept of your mistakes now that you don't have a sprout icon, right? And you don't know how much that is. Like, you don't know how friendly the randoms you played with actually were until you realize, until you see it for real without the sprout icon protecting you. I just barely managed to do my entire opener perfectly, and then I had to run away. That is awesome. And I will probably not get to do it a single time again for the rest of this Alliance raid. Sweet on! I should probably have done armor crush on that one.
Let life flower and flourish.
Sweet on decent. Wow. Funny memes.
Mine is the breath of
Hey Byron. I think I'm standing in the correct spot for this to be safe. That is the scary part about using 10 Chijin, is that once you start, you don't really want to go anywhere. So you're just using it sometimes, hoping that the mechanic isn't going to mess with you. Nengstar says, why are you fighting God? Oh, that'll make sense later. It's a story, it's a side quest. You'll get it. Why am I splashing water at an earth god on the other hand? Now that is an even better question. It is a side quest, yes. I think I'm going to get hit. That's really difficult to read that mechanic. No! My Suiton ran out! I was occupied with stuff for so long. Oh, Fika, you're doing too many things.
Bow down like the willow.
My Suiton. I was using that, you know.
Beyond adversity lies strength.
So many cooldowns to use. So little time. She prefers mommy. Well, then she shouldn't hit us. It's really funny when they were, I believe the trailer, like the patch trailer that showcases this raid,
Be strong.
they specifically have all footage that has Nofika like featured in it, have her back facing the camera so you can't see her front. And I believe she's the only one where they do that. I wonder why.
By my authority, land be remade.
They understood the assignment. Woohoo! A mage limit break. From our team. Limit break in an alliance raid. Oh yeah, absolutely. The thing is that these packs we just fought are pretty big, so it's pretty time efficient to use a limit break. There's also the point that you typically won't get to, like, you really don't use limit break 3 on the bosses. So we're not going to miss it, that it's not there for the next boss. It doesn't happen much. I suppose the kind of times where you would most commonly see it happen doesn't happen as much. In the old version of the Praetorium, you know, MSQ Roulette, it was a common strategy to cast ranged limit break on Nero, because that when you pull him, you lose the limit break bar, because that's how bosses work. When we pull the bosses up there, we lose the limit break bar anyways. The reason why we have the limit break to use on the trash is actually because we didn't use it on Nofika. And that's the same in, say, Praetorium. So people would use the ranged physical limit break, you know, like a bard or something, specifically because they could reach from so far away that they could cast the whole thing without engaging the boss. So if one of those players got there first, they would just cast it immediately, so that no one managed to pull before that. But I don't think they do that anymore.
Forgive me, but I couldn't stay away.
It seems my
double
sister
boss time.
shall be joining us.
Poseidon says, I learned the hard way this boss can go through invuln with Meteor. Did you mean, just checking, did you mean the behemoth we just fought, or do you mean this boss? Remember, when you get the fire debuff, it means stop everything. Easiest way to deal with this is to just untarget the boss and remove your hands from the keyboard. Just drop your controller. Lightly, gently. Drop your controller gently. Like so. On Behemoth. Sheath your way. That is also a way to do it. I just press escape so I untarget the boss completely.
I shall measure your work.
On Behemoth. Yeah, that makes sense. I think the meteors does unique damage. The green icon, right? That tends to be the one that kills you through invulns. Alejandro says sometimes auto attack counts too. Auto attacks always count for that mechanic. Moving, auto attacks, anything, all of it counts. That's why you have to untarget the boss and everything. Just completely stop your attack. Because anything you do at all whatsoever will count. The only reason why you might have the feeling that sometimes it doesn't count is if you just by sheer happenstance don't do an auto attack during the time frame where it is there. I'm pretty sure at the very least. That's why you need to like remove your target to be on the safe side. Ah! Ah! Often you can also easily survive it if you just get one auto attack in. What kills you is typically if you do like an auto attack, you do your GZD, actually while you're at it you're also weaving and stuff like that. So it's just going completely crazy. That's usually what gets you killed to mechanics like that. That sounds a little bit excessive, Coco. I just turn off my mouse and unplug my keyboard. Actually, that wouldn't even do anything. That wouldn't help because your character would still be auto-attacking the boss. Isn't that something? I turn off my PC. That also wouldn't actually help because your character would still be in game auto-attacking the boss. Alde 4. That would also have you in-game auto attacking the boss. It's pretty funny when you think about it. You actually have to tell your character to not attack the boss. That is the only thing that counts. Or would be good enough to be sure. Or sheath your weapon, as Alejandro suggested. Just log out and delete the character. I wonder if it would let you do that if you're in the middle of a raid. I wonder if it would be like, your character is still logged in, you can't do that.
This too is fate.
Upon the most exalted of
But,
battlefields you shall stand.
Points for creativity, everyone. Absolutely, absolutely. You get points for creativity. Must find dumb solution. But what if I don't want to untarget the boss? Is it too late for coffee? It's probably a bit late for coffee, don't you think? I would say it's a little late for coffee. But it depends on when you're going to bed. If you sip... Wow, that is incredible timing. If you sip, then you would be drinking coffee so you could stay up later. Because he works nights. Are you crazy? Then no. Ah. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't drink coffee now, then I won't be able to get to bed at all. Why is it this random mob who's still alive? Just this single thing.
Summon your courage and press on.
I keep getting woken up in the middle of the night, so... do you drink coffee before bed every night, Coco? Because that might be a factor. If your argument is this too late to drink coffee because I can't sleep anyway? Then do you perhaps drink Uh-oh. That wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to use Hooton. And then I just completely messed it up. We're bound to use Horizon anyway. And then it goes donut, side, center, and then we go back in, and then side. Horizon! For when you mess up. Part of a healthy breakfast. Horizon flakes. Ah, you were calling it. Guess what I forgot again? That's incredible. I actually went a whole minute and didn't do armor crush.
Better than that against me.
I think I'm getting tired. Well, that worked decently. I think we're getting back into it again. And then the boss does this.
Only victory or defeat.
Ah! I didn't click far enough. I think I'm dead. Yep. Me, I'm dead. I'm die. Coco says Sunday I had to help my mom wake up at 4 a.m.
One's own hand.
Then Monday, 2 of our rabbits tried to kill each other, and now I woke up at 4. And because my drugged out rabbit. Oh, well, that is a bad start to your day. That spin is really awkward because it doesn't actually happen if you manage to get far enough in the mechanic before. So often it never actually resolves at all, so people tend to completely ignore it for that reason. What happened to this group? We finished the shared spear before they finished their single one.
Now rest. Mine is the easiest.
Bam! Oh, they didn't have a lot of players. That does make sense.
Ah, would that our clash could continue forever.
Good. For a second there, I thought she was going to target me, who was busy using Tenshijin and not planning on moving.
There is no retreat, only victory or defeat. Yes, lose yourself in the joy of battle.
Melee ley lines. That's actually a good comparison. I'm not sure what compelled me to go to that one specifically. It seems like that particular mechanic is really random which group goes where. if it's not marked preemptively. Her hair is so big. She's like one of those Vocaloid idols that are, or just anime girls for that matter, that are like 50% hair. Yeah, she's like Miku. Oh boy, I got it wrong. I don't remember how often she does the donut then circle, but it's rare enough that I never expect it. Oh yeah, I'll do it. I have weakness, so and it doesn't scale with that, so I still do full damage. I feel like this fight is dragging on a lot for some reason. But that is probably also partly because I spend a lot of time dead.
Well fought, Morris. Your next test awaits.
But yeah, Tenchijin is melee ley lines. It is not just melee ley lines. It's Heavensward ley lines. Back when the ley lines disappeared if you left them at all. Coco says, did you have a Vocaloid phase? Yes, it's right now. If you are in the... As you will see if you scroll back enough in the Discord server, if you check the music channel, the vast majority of the songs I've shared has been some Vocaloid stuff. And it's, apparently I've heard this boss has gotten, what is it, this boss's nickname has become Eurovision, I believe, because of how the song is. How Eurovision the song is. Yeah, this is also reminiscent of the older anime openings. That's true. But the crazy violin section here is very Eurovision. Hatari has made Eurovision good again. What is that? I haven't actually watched Eurovision in a few years. Oh. I feel like I planned that out perfectly, and then Menfina just decided to deny me that one. Just leave. Jump to the center. My mug! Menfina, I was busy bursting you. Really? You're gonna do me like this? Are you telling me you haven't seen that? No, I have not seen that. Poke Shack says, yesterday I used Dragoon in this fight, and in this part the Yellow Moon that changed faces. It's a bit long, I'll have to watch. I think I'll have to read that after the fight. Or at least while it's not as active. After the first Moon Exploder, I used Spine Shatter Dive. Oh. And she teleported to the middle and I died. Aww. Aww. That is unlucky. She just grabbed you and pulled you to the center that way. That is really awkward. Like in the middle of my attack, it becomes slippery, and I didn't even notice. And I tried to get clever, and then it just didn't work. It just didn't work, and I wasted the majority of the Ninki I got from Miss Wee. Sad. That's very, very pixel perfect there. Over here. All of my cooldowns are just a mess because of that awkward intermission timing. So I'm just fighting to find which cooldowns actually land even remotely within my burst anymore. That's a brutal combination. Like, you just have to have chosen the correct side of the arena to hide on. And cassettes. 10 Chijin. Nope, wasted 10. Yeah. Well, I'm going to use the limit break now. Great time, because all my cooldowns are ticking down anyway. How many ninjas do we have? The answer is yes. If I actually had checked for a moment, I would have found that the entire raid, every single DPS is actually a ninja. The tanks are also ninjas, and so are the healers. Everyone's a ninja here. I just didn't notice. My first floor tank moment after a year. Well, eventually, you make mistakes. We all do. Linkstar says, I recently elusive jumped off a ledge. I normally don't use it, but I had an opportunity and I failed. It is difficult. A fun fact from... I don't think it is in the new Dragoon Guide, but my level 1 to 50 Dragoon Guide from Shadowbringers, the fun fact in that video, I don't know how many of you realize that there's a little fun fact at the very end of the videos. All of my guides, all of my videos, my main videos have like small fun facts at the end. That one's fun fact was that let's see, if I switch to Dragoon, at level 35 you learn elusive jump. What's the first piece of content you could feasibly do at level 35? Is it Brave Flux? Nope, that's level 34. The first content you can do in Final Fantasy XIV at the earliest, where you're level 35, is the naval, which is like... I think it's the first piece of content you can end up in with a ledge that you can die from falling off of. And you learn elusive jump at level 35. I'm just saying, I wonder if they planned that. How did you scare them, Kasari? How did you do that? What did you do? Did you use Super Bolide? Sadistic developers. It's really funny. Like, the only thing missing is that Red Mage gets displacement at level 35. But no, that's level 40. For some reason, that's level 40. It would be so much funnier if that was also level 35. And like, if Reaper, they got Hell's Ingress at level 20, but then at level 35 they get Egress just so that it's the same joke. I think it would have been funny. Super Blight on the last proximity AoE on Heloni. Oh. The second Spine Chat, I believe that's level 88? I think it's level 88. 84. I had a 50% chance to guess it and I got it wrong. Hmm. It is from Endwalker. I don't know why you said level 96. Yeah, but it is from Endwalker. A lot of jobs got like a second charge on a bunch of stuff in Endwalker. I actually mentioned specifically Spine Shatter Dive in my video about the 2-minute burst. The 2-minute curse video. Because basically, you can look at a lot of your cooldowns on any job and go, if only it had like 2 charges, so I don't have to use it exactly when it becomes available. Like something like jump would be super nice if you could have like 2 charges of it. It would really make the Dragoon rotation very nice as well, because if they had 2 charges on high jump, it means your opener could actually have Life of the Dragon in it. But it also means that you could stockpile 2 jumps, which is ultimately possibly what you would do. Like every minute you would do high jump twice during lance charge, and then also Life of the Dragon would become an extremely hectic rotation. And the reason why I believe that is because you can take something that doesn't even add that much, give it an extra charge to give it like more flexibility, and what happens? Stack them in the cooldown window. Spine Shatter Dive had a 60-second cooldown, so you use it alongside lance charge. Alright, we give you an extra charge. Surely you will have 1 available for the movement. Nope. Stack 2 of them, use them in the 2-minute burst. How do you make people use their mobility options for mobility? You do this. Oh, shoulder tackle does damage, so you have to use it on cooldown. Removes the damage from your mobility option. And suddenly, it became an actual mobility option. Incredible. Or elusive jump. Elusive jump actually used to do other things. Elusive jump used to clear snares and heavy. So if you were bound or you were slowed down, you could use elusive jump to delete it. And elusive jump also at one point just cut half of the enmity you had. Like just deleted half of all of your enmity. Speaking of enmity we talked about earlier. Just deleted half of it. So Dragoons, you could just use elusive jump every now and then you were pretty good. I'm pretty sure it did that. But yeah, it's pretty funny how that works. Another funny thing is that, speaking of enmity, I can't remember what the action was called, but Ninja used to have an action that, like a cooldown, that in a cooldown window, allowed the ninja to redirect, I can't remember if it was some or all of the enmity the ninja generated to someone else. I think it was all of it. Yeah, of course you used it on the tank, right? But the reason why that is funny is because in World of Warcraft, rogues and hunters have the actions Tricks of the Trade and Misdirection that do literally the same thing. Like, exactly that. And Final Fantasy XIV has been inspired a lot by World of Warcraft. Especially back in the days when enmity mattered. Hey, Danilo Padua Fernandez. Danilo Padua Fernandez. Hello. But it is funny how mobility actions only really work as mobility actions if it does not have any damage attached to it. And hopefully the learning experience the developers had from removing the damage from shoulder tackle and making it into thunderclap on monks will make them do that for more jobs. Like, I think that would be good. That would be real nice. Yeah. Right. We got through all of the roulettes. Right around time. Right around time. Say, I'm from Brazil. Love you guys. Helped me a lot. I'm having a nice time in Heavensport now. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. That's great to hear. Danilo Padua Fernandez. That is a difficult name. I don't think I'm saying it right at all. Alejandro says, as a newbie, I didn't spend my shoulder tackle charges. I believe my general advice, now it's been a while since I made that guide, and it has also been replaced by an Endwalker version a while back. But when I talked about shoulder tackle in my Shadowbringers monk starter guide, I'm pretty sure my advice was, you can, as in, you can use it for damage, but you can save it for mobility as well. I typically try to suggest that, like mention that technically, because the key thing here is that if we just jump to Dragoon again, pun intended, Spine Shatter Dive does it's just 250 potency. It's not that much in the grand scheme of things. Using Spine Shatter Dive during Lance Charge means that you're gaining 25% potency. Doing it during Dragonside as well is like 40 potency in total, I think. At Battle Litany it might be even more. During raid cooldowns, maybe it's like 60, 70 or 80 potency. And it's two of them, you're saving both of them for the raid cooldowns. So maybe it's 100, maybe it's even 200 potency. Let me put it like this. If that over there is the boss, right? If that's the boss, and I'm like over here, and I'm specifically metering with this one, then I could use Spine Shatter Dive. Bam! I can use True Thrust. Just like that. But if I'm standing over here, and my GZD is ready, and I go, no, Spine Shatter Dive is for raid cooldowns, and then do this, then I lost 80 potency, not counting the amount of potency I lost, potentially, by delaying my proper good GZDs. One, because I used Piercing Talon instead. The amount of potency you lose by being greedy with your mobility buttons is a lot more than people realize. Like, if you feel like you prefer to save your mobility buttons in case you need them, that's understandable, because it's surprisingly often that they will actually be a bigger benefit to, like, the key trick with there being two charges on mobility options isn't that you can use both of them in raid cooldowns. The trick is you can use one of them so that you're not, losing out on damage by sitting on them. You can have one ready if you need it, and then you can still use it every minute for some damage if you want to, or be a little bit more aggressive with its use. If you only have one, then you have to choose between never using Spine Shatter Dive in case you need it, or using it and not having it when you need it. But because there's two charges, you can be very aggressive with the first one and then save the second one for when you need it. And that's really helpful. The problem is that if you look at any openers or optimized bursts, you'll find that they will typically always use all of your cooldowns, including your mobility, every time. In fact, I have heard people argue that triple cast and swift cast for black mages is not a mobility option because you use them for your burst. using triple cast for your burst is typically done to circumvent Fire 4 and Despair's slightly longer cast times, which means that in the grand scheme of things, you're saving around 1 second with one triple cast. So if your Black Mage does 9,000 DPS, whatever, it does 9,000 DPS, then you're using triple cast to get 9,000 damage. 9,000 damage. How much potency is that? I am actually not sure. Let me just see what happens if I use Blizzard 3. Oh, 8,000! So, give or take. How much is it when I have Enochian active? So you're trading triple cast for one Blizzard 3. For one free Blizzard 3. That's what you're getting. But if something in the boss fight comes up where you need triple cast, then you don't have it because you traded it for Blizzard 3. Of course, with experience you'll figure out on this fight I won't need triple cast if I just, you know, plan my movements well enough and go early. But saying that triple cast is not a mobility option because, as Alejandro said, triple cast is a planned cooldown, removes your mobility options. It's pretty awkward that it works like that. Alejandro says, in my opinion, Dragoon should have only 2 types of jump abilities. Why only 2? Kasadi says, I sort of feel bad I do not use elusive jump, even if I main Dragoon. The reason is due to my track record of misclicks. It is funny. When I looked up optimal openers for Dragoon, they use sprint for the gap closer and not elusive jump. And I think it has something to do with how fast you fly forward. Like, because of the speed you fly forward, you can't actually do your first GSD when you're in melee range, when you elusive jump or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but Reaper can use their gap closer. And Alejandro mentions Arnavang on Dancer. And don't forget Paradox and Procs. That's also true, but the thing is, Paradox is technically only available in a very strict window on both sides of the rotation. So while you can use it for mobility, it's more like, oh, I need to move now and I have Paradox anyway, so I'll use it early so I can use the mobility. And also, Paradox is only movement in the ice phase. And the procs you can't really rely on. Often you want to use Firestarter for transpose line tricks. And Thunder, well, you can use those, but you don't know when you have them. Like, the magical part about triple cast and swift cast is that you know you have them. Infinite Paradox is movement. Infinite Paradox is hilarious. And extremely difficult. I can't actually remember which video it was that I showcased it in. There was, I think it might have been the janky optimization one. Was it a different one? Was it Crazy Opener? It might have been the Crazy Openers one. I think it was the Crazy Openers one. I think I spent over an hour trying to get the Infinite Paradox rotation right. The problem was that the sequence that I had found turned out that it didn't. It turns out that Infinite Paradox is kind of strict with how much spell speed you have. If you have too much spell speed, it might not work right. It was ridiculous openers, right? Now Alejandro says triple cast could also be seen as a DPS gain because you have to move and wouldn't cast otherwise. Precisely, and that is the reason. That's what I'm saying when I'm saying Spine Shatter Dive. Using it to gap close is actually potentially a bigger damage gain than using it in your cooldowns. It's a little difficult to determine exactly because, you know, Piercing Talon means you're doing something with the GCD, but technically your GCD, like your GCDs as a Dragoon is worth at least however much your weakest GCD is worth, which is around 280 potency, so using Piercing Talon means you've lost at least 130. And using Spine Shatter Dive to gap close means that use of Spine Shatter Dive lands outside of raid cooldowns, which is a loss of, depending on how good your raid is about raid cooldowns, could be like 100 potency. But that still means you gained more by using it for mobility. And triple cast is the same. If you need triple cast to be casting at a specific time in the fight, and if you don't have it, you're going to be doing nothing, then, well, you could imagine that in that time where you could be triple casting, you could have cast anything. It could have been 3 Blizzard 3s for all I care. That's 30,000 damage, as we could see with Enochian up. Which is more than the 1 second gain, which was about, you know... If your DPS is 9,000, then it's like 1 Blizzard 3 that you're gaining by using triple cast. By saving 1 second. Of course, if it's during raid cooldowns, you might be doing 20 or 30 or 40% more DPS at that very moment, and maybe during your burst, you're doing 20,000 DPS. But it's still the same idea. Oh, good night, Linkstar. Or you could stack on polyglot stacks. But polyglots being used during raid cooldowns is also a damage gain. So where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? Triple cast is a DPS gain to use during raid cooldowns. Swift cast is a DPS gain to use during raid cooldowns. Ley lines obviously is a DPS gain to use during raid cooldowns. Polyglots being spent during raid cooldowns is DPS gain, and Amplifier adding an extra polyglot during raid cooldowns is also a DPS gain. So which one is it? Like that's the problem, is that you can take anything that the developers give you, say, use this, this is for mobility. Black Mage, listen. This is a mobility tool. I call it triple cast. You get 2 charges of it, so you can use one of them aggressively, and the second one you can save. The second one you can save for mobility reasons. One of them is for damage. One of them is for mobility. Black Mage thinks damage. It's all damage. Coco says Black Mage doesn't move though. Ah, of course. Problem solved. Just don't move, Lamau. But it is funny. It is funny. It's I do hope that that we can get a little bit away from the whole burst meta, because it gets a little bit wild. Anyway, I don't have any more roulettes or anything planned for tonight. So if there's anything you guys would like to talk about before we round up and finish, this is a great time to do it. Other than that, just a second. This YouTube channel has a community Discord where you can find all the friendly people that you meet here on the YouTube streams, and you will also find a weekly schedule where of what everything is happening on the channel, and you will find an announcement room where I post whenever there's a new stream or whatever. So it's much easier to keep track of what's happening on the YouTube channel when the YouTube algorithm decides to not tell you, which happens sometimes. Great place to be. You don't get tagged every time I post something unless you explicitly choose to be. Secondarily, there's also someone who does like one cast. Oh, they do 3 slipstream. Well, They do 4 Slipstream, 2 Ruby Rights, and Ruby 3. And then, secondarily, as you may have seen, this YouTube channel has like a membership you can make use of if you're interested in supporting the channel with that. That gives you access to the fancy badge, like the one that Gunsmokes has. That is Coco. And it then upgrades with a little sparkle and things like that. I drew the badges myself. It also gives you access to a few emotes. I need to figure out what I do with. I think I have 1 or 2 free emote spaces. I need to do something with that. And it also gives you the opportunity to participate when I do polls on things. Every so often, I will make a poll on something like, what should the next job guides be? And I ask the members of the channel about this, specifically because when I do them publicly, it tends to result in a lot of people voting that then turn out to not actually watch or not be interested, based on some polls I've done in the past. So yeah, there's a little this and that rewards from that. And then there's of course the part where your name lands in the end slate of my videos, if that is something you care about. Yeah, it is of course optional. I do not post member-only content at all. Incidentally, according to the terms, the content creator terms of Final Fantasy XIV, it is not actually allowed to post videos on YouTube that are not public. Did you know? And I see that people are starting to leave in game. Thank you, Pasari and Gilano, for joining me with the roulettes, and also thank you, Coco. But yeah, Discord, YouTube memberships. The next few days, there's a few shorts coming out about an opener and a little fun fact I found out about gear. And Friday, I have a little mishmash of tips and tricks and stuff in Final Fantasy XIV that you might have a hard time discovering if you don't actively look out for it. Now, Alejandro says, by the way, why is no one talking about the moon on the 6.4 patch that has the other half of the La Habrea's mask? I haven't noticed. That is interesting. I haven't noticed. I haven't actually looked very deeply at it, but that is an interesting point. Maybe I'll look at that. That is also something you can discuss in the spoiler room on the Discord server. Now then, I don't have anything else, so thank you all so much for watching. And maybe if you like the stream, like it so other people know that it is an awesome stream. They should watch the VOD. Thank you so much. Good night or good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And I'll see you all very soon. Good night.